Hi, everyone, and welcome to QI Connect. And the smart ones amongst you will have realised that can't possibly be Jason because he doesn't speak like that. I have a stinking cold, so better to be on a webinar than in person. So please don't feel too sorry for me, but if I cough my guts up, there are substitutes ready to take over. And most of the talking today will be, of course, done by David Marquet, our guest of honour, frankly, and we'll hear a little bit more about him and from him in the next few minutes. So thank you for joining, wherever you are in the world. We are in Scotland, the QI Connect team who are holding this together for you, and I'm going to hand over briefly to Jennifer to talk you through some technical assistance at the beginning of the call.
Thanks, Jason, and we're all sending you get well soon messages from the QI Connect studio, so we really appreciate you joining us today, and hello to all of our QI Connectors all around the world. So we're just going to go through just a couple of quick housekeeping slides just about how to use WebEx. So if you could please use the chat function that you see on the right-hand side of your screen to communicate, and I'll talk you through this in just a moment. We do want it to be a really interactive session, so please get your questions and comments at the ready. If you are having any technical difficulties, such as not being able to hear our presenter speak, or if you keep losing connection, then please message the event manager using the chat function or by pressing *0 on your telephone keypad. So these sessions are designed to be an interactive learning experience, and we do encourage you to use the chat function to share any questions, comments or ideas throughout the talk. Just to note, there will be an opportunity for Q&A at the end of the session, and we'll also be sharing hyperlinks within the chat function to any resources mentioned by our speakers today. But if any of our QI connectors have any resources that would like to share, we'd absolutely love for you to do that also. So we did promise that today's session was going to be interactive, so we're keen to find out where you are joining us from today. If you could please use the annotation tool that you see circled in red on your screen. And then click on the arrow icon. Circled again there. And then get ready. And if you could just click on the map to tell us this is where Scotland disappears. We just give others just a moment. Sometimes there can be a bit of a delay. Hi, Jimmy. Hi, Morag.
We're in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. That seems odd.
Yeah.
Maybe David on his submarine, of course.
Okay.
I'm trying to put the camera back.
Great. Well, I'm now going to just hand you back over to Jason, who's going to just take you into our competition time. If you just stay with me. Okay.
Okay, so testing that arrow. Now you've done it. Now you've done it once. You're now going to. I'm going to give you a country, and I'm immediately going to then click on a set of flags. And you are going to click on the flag of the country I say. I'm not sure I'm as coherent as I usually am, but roughly speaking, I hope you're getting it. The winner, the person who clicks first on the country I say, will win the very rare, although there are 300 in Healthcare Improvement Scotland's cupboard, the QI Connect mug. But much more importantly today, you'll get a signed copy of David's book, which is a unique thing. So I'm going to click, and I'm going to tell you that the country you need to find the flag of is India. Oh, Julie Clark wins, and Andrew Kemp needs to know where Brazil and India are. So Julie Clark, well done. We'll be in touch with you, and the team will get you your QI Connect mug for your LEMSIP and your signed copy of David's book. So just before we hand to David, let's have a quick summary of who's with us today. There's over 500 people signed up for our call. We have 1,200 organisations now in some way connected with QI Connect. We have all of Scotland's health boards. We have 88 higher education institutes from around the world who listen either live or they use the recordings in their classes and other places. And if you want to use those recordings, you can get them from our website. Here, if you Google QI Connect, you'll find all the recorded QI Connect from the last few years available, and you'll also, in the next little while, find this one available if you want to use it for other ways, other classes. A couple of very important connections we have. We're connected formally with the ISQA Fellowship Program, so many of them join us and listen, and we're also connected as part of the Health Foundation's Q community with NHS Improvement in England and Healthcare Improvement Scotland in Scotland. And just before we hand to David, you'll hear from Ashut in a little while at the end of David's talk. And Ashut is really there to ask us our first question, but I'd like you to use the chat box as much as you can, and we'll take some questions from there. After Ashut's asked David a question, we'll then take some questions from the crowd. We can't open, unfortunately, up to audio. It gets too difficult. So we'll take them from your text as you're typing. So if anything strikes you as interesting or you want a little bit more information from David, then please do that. David will take us to about 10 to the hour, 10 to 5 in Scotland probably, and then we'll have a little bit of time then to ask some questions of him. The other place you can interact either now or afterwards is on Twitter, so please use our hashtag and our Twitter name to keep in touch with others who are there, and we'll tweet as the talk goes along, and you might want to tweet at the end any learning that you've had. So that takes us neatly to our speaker for today. He follows in an illustrious line of QI Connect speakers who very graciously give up their time and effort to join us. But David really is in the elite of the world's leadership speakers. He is an author. Many of you will have read his Turn the Ship Around book. And I think the most interesting thing about him is he was the commander of a nuclear submarine. That seems like a fairly unique thing to do. And his leadership lessons come from that time and subsequently. So it's my great pleasure to introduce you, David, to the group from around the world who listen to QI Connect. And I'm going to hand you the ball if we do that. And you should now be able to just click through your slides.
Okay, thank you very much, and welcome everybody. Julie, how you found the flag of India that fast? I have no idea. I was still loading on my computer. But welcome everybody, and despite the fact that I'm an American, we have strong roots in our family back to Scotland. Both my parents went to Carnegie Tech in Pittsburgh, founded by Scott, of course. And I operated on a submarine. Oh, and by the way, my dad had a set of pipes that he would play only frequently enough to make noise, but not really be good at them. So that was somewhat god-awful. But I did operate on a submarine out of the Holy Loch back during the Cold War, which was very important to me. But one of the things that I particularly think is important about Scotland and the legacy is the role that Scotland played during the Industrial Revolution. And the archetype is, of course, James Watt and the development of the steam engine. And just to jump to the end of the speech, what I believe is needed now is a new revolution where we need to basically move past the Industrial Revolution, ways of working, ways of speaking to each other. And I am optimistic about the opportunities for Scotland to, again, play an outsized role in developing the next revolution in the way humans interact, making the lives of many people better. I've titled my speech today, The Moral Burden of Leadership. And when I think about healthcare, we all have respect for the link between what healthcare professionals do and the health of human beings. And we go to school for years in some cases. We get certificates. We swear oaths to do no harm and to help people. And there's a very clear link between our actions and the health of other human beings. But I think leadership ought to be judged by the same standard. because leadership often sets up the environment in which we can be at our best. And we all know that leadership, although the results might not be as immediate as a visit to the doctor, leadership can have strong, long-term impacts, good or bad, on human individuals. And therefore, because it impacts the quality of life of other humans, to me that means there's a moral aspect to it. So what I'm hoping to do today is a little bit of telling. I'm going to tell a story about my journey as a leader. Some showing. I'm going to practice. We have a little video that I'd like to play that you guys are going to see in action the things that I'm talking about. We won't get a whole lot of practice, but I'll give you some ideas of ways that you can practice these in a safe place. And then ideally, you take some of these ideas and try them and apply them at work. So that's our agenda for the day. Now, I want to start with this. What is leadership? When people talk about, well, we're going to have a leadership conference, we're going to talk about leadership or the impact of leadership, I almost always say, well, what do you mean by leadership? And I get there are a lot of different things. This is this boils it down for me, which is that leadership means we believe that everyone has a superhero inside of them. And our responsibility as leaders is to create the environment where it can emerge. Now, when it comes to talking about quality, most people jump to what I would call sort of an external view of quality. Patient experience, proper dosage, minimizing mistakes in the operating room. Those kind of metrics are how we measure quality. But my assertion, my hypothesis is that more important than those things, and what sets the stage for all those other things, is the quality of our work experience. And so what I'd like to do is refocus quality from an external delivery to something that we live and breathe every day by the way that we treat each other. Because if we treat each other with respect, if we treat each other with an assumption of good intent, then it's more likely that the people around us will feel safe to bring out their inner superhero. And to me, it's about safety. So that's what we're going to try and get to. Now, my story starts here on a nuclear submarine. I just want to show you a couple pictures of what it's like. It's very crowded, very intense. These are the bunks you see on the left. This is a torpedo on the right. Don't sleepwalk. That's bad. And there's only 117 of these bunks, but we have 140 people we take to sea. That means what? You have to share, not at the same time. but one person's in the rack, they get up, they go on duty, and the other person who is on duty then can come and get the bunk. But it's still warm from their body heat. It's a very intimate experience. And, not everyone would like that. And this is where we dine. This is where the officers dine. Food is actually pretty good on a submarine. It's a very hierarchical setup. So the captain would sit at the end of the table, the next senior person, the first officer, and then the engineer, and then the weapons officer, and in exact sequence. And at the far end of the table, the two youngest officers would be sitting in exact sequence, not almost sequence, but in exact sequence. And this may seem odd to you, but for us, it was the air we lived in. It was this idea of hierarchy and structure was just, oh yeah, of course, that's how it is. Now, I don't always show this photo, but this is the wardroom. That's the room I just showed you. When we're going into combat, when we go into combat, we set the wardroom up as our own operating room. We don't have a doctor, but we have a paramedic who comes with us. Who's got a big book. You show up. If you're sick, he kind of pokes you and he flips open the book and he says, "Hey, appendectomy, lie down on the table." And you don't want to get sick. So Jason, don't be sick don't come on a submarine with your cold. And we need someone to help the paramedic. We used our head chef. Because when we go into combat, the head chef has nothing to do, and the head chef's really good with knives, so he's the guy you want helping the paramedic. But space is at a premium, and we double purpose all of our rooms. Now we also get to do things like this. we're bringing a Special Forces team, a SEAL team, we call them, onto the submarine. Now, the Special Forces guys, when they first came to submarines, wanted to know where the gym was. Well, of course, there is no gym because we don't have any room for that. And they missed their daily workouts, and they said, well, we can't live here. We need to show up at the very last minute. We got to stay back in the gym. And the Navy said, okay, we agree with you. And so here they are, the SEAL team's showing up on this helicopter. They're going to drop that rope that you see, and then they're going to come down, and those people in olive, that's the SEAL team, and the people in the orange jackets, that's me up there on the fin and on the sail there, and then my crew. And you see I have two crew members down on deck. One is up by the main hatch, and the other one is one of those really young guys way back holding the rope, because we need to tether the rope at the bottom. We can't tie it, but you have to physically hold it so when they slide down. Now, so this is one of the youngest guys because we need a strong guy to hold that rope. And the problem is things happen really quickly, and things can go wrong really quickly. The wind can shift, a wave could come, someone could slip. You could see like the fourth person forward on deck there. It looks like he's maybe about to slip off. They could, one of the Special Forces guys could come down too hard, he hurts his leg. And that guy has to make decisions. That person's going to have to make decisions. And they can't ask me up on the sail because, first of all, there's a helicopter right there and no one can hear them. And secondly, there's no time. It happens too fast. And third, this is what I see from up there. I can't even see what's going on. So if you create an environment where people have to be told what to do, it is not going to work in moments of stress, crisis, or just even fast-moving operations. And this is just a microcosm or a prism. Even in day-to-day operations, an organization that doesn't need to wait to be told what to do will move faster than one where we're always waiting to be told what to do. And there's more ownership and responsibility because I'm not just a cog in the machine. I'm going to my boss and saying, hey, here's what I think we should do, here's what I intend to do, and here's why it's the right thing. So that's the team that I needed to develop. Now, I was assigned initially to command the USS Olympia, and I'm going to show you a couple frameworks for leadership. And the first framework comes from, this is my book, from Annapolis, Maryland, United States Naval Academy, U.S. government, definition of leadership. Leadership can be defined as directing the thoughts, plans, and actions of others so as to obtain and command their obedience, confidence, respect, and their loyal cooperation. And you may sort of recoil in horror at this definition, which I kind of do now, but at the time, it was awesome. I said, yeah, that's good. I like that. I'm good at telling people what to do. I like telling people what to do. And I'm going to try to direct their thoughts, plans, and actions. Not just plans and actions, though, but thoughts as well, which I don't think anyone can actually do. But that's what we tried to do. And the framework, I like to simplify things. I make these little 2x2 matrices all the time. And I call it the knowing-telling framework. So where am I? I know, I don't know, I tell, I don't tell. And my idea was, leaders want to operate in the upper left quadrant as far as possible. They want to know everything and tell everything. Those two things are linked. I'm the one who gets to tell because I'm the one who knows, and because I will be the teller, I also need to be the knower. But those two things are linked inherently in our mind. Well, what happened was I spent 12 months getting ready for the Olympia, studied every single detail about the submarine, and at the very last minute, 2 weeks to go, the Navy said, no, you're going to go to the Santa Fe instead. And I collapsed on the floor in a fetal position because that was the most horrifying news that one could receive, because the Santa Fe was the worst performing submarine in the fleet. The Santa Fe was getting poor inspection scores, and the morale was very low, and it was measured by the fact that only 3 out of 33 sailors signed up to stay on board the submarine over the previous 12 months. And the captain quit a year early, and then so the Navy had this gap, and they said, well, we can't have a submarine without a captain. Marquet, you're going to go to Santa Fe. We're going to leave the captain on Olympia there a little longer, and we'll train somebody else up there. But you need to go to Santa Fe now. And the problem is Santa Fe is a different kind of submarine. So all that training, all those wiring diagrams that I'd memorized was now irrelevant. All the buttons were different. That was scary. But, of course, I had to exude a confident demeanor and wear a mask pretending to be the bold, confident submarine commander that we all expect from the movies. Now, when you're a submarine commander, you might think, well, you're like one of the most important people on the planet because you have all these missiles. You can blow up whole cities. Yeah, but here's some things that are not in my control. Who was on my team, what positions they were in, the resources I had available to me, and even our operational schedule and the deadline. None of these things I could control. The only thing I could control was how we talked to each other, and it turns out that this is one of the most important things, the most important, according to some study, things about how teams operate, what their effectiveness is, and their ability to provide higher quality output. Here we are, we're down in the sonar room. Now, I have to tell you, if this had been the sonar room on the Olympia, I could have pushed any of these buttons, turned any of these dials. I could have sat down and operated this equipment. On the Santa Fe, I didn't know what it did. And so I started asking questions, and I would ask the sailors. Now, to be honest, when I would ask questions in the past, it was really more like a test. Hey, do you know what this button does? Yes, sir. And it was really because I already knew. I wasn't asking to learn. I was asking to test. And so here in the Santa Fe, I was like, it's like Alice in Wonderland time. But part of me is still trying to protect the all-knowing submarine commander in me. And I'm asking, hey, what does this do? And finally I get to this button, and this poor sailor, it was something we didn't use very often, and the poor sailor had forgotten, and he's like, I forget, and he shrinks down in his chair because he's embarrassed. And as soon as he said that, everyone looked at me, because that's when, as the captain, I would speak up and I would convey the answer. But the dirty secret was, of course, I didn't know it. And for a moment, I wanted to pretend. I wanted to say something like, well, son, found out, and then come tell me. But I was, for some reason, I didn't do that. I said, yeah, I don't know either. I don't know. I never heard a submarine commander say, I don't know. This was the scariest moment of my 3 years as a submarine commander, not going up against the Chinese Navy or anything like that you might imagine. It was standing in front of my sailors and admitting I didn't know something. And you know what happened? Nothing. Nothing bad happened. And then people started smiling and saying, well, hey, we'll figure it out. And then there was this mist that lifted. And people stopped having to pretend that they knew stuff that they didn't know. And we learned faster. And we started actually getting smarter when we stopped trying to protect an image of, I always need to know everything. And whether it was in a meeting or a one-on-one conversation or standing watch, this idea that you can admit you don't know, that's not weakness, was very, 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 very powerful for propelling the submarine forward. The second thing that happened was I gave a bad order, and it happened here in the control room. So you should be seeing a picture. There's a young sailor. He's got a stick in front of him with a wheel. That's where he drives the submarine. And we were standing in the control room. This is the first day at sea on board the submarine. And we're going to do an exercise where we shut down the reactor. We only have one, and it's very tense because you got to get the reactor repaired, or you have to come back into port on the diesel engine. And in the meantime, you're draining the battery, which is very uncomfortable, but because of course there's no charging stations in the middle of the Pacific. So we shut down the reactor, and the engineers are running around in the engine room trying to find the problem, taking readings. And we shift from the main propulsion turbines over to this backup electric motor. All you need to know is that this electric motor on all the other submarines I've ever been on has two speeds. It's like first gear, second gear. On the Santa Fe, it only had one speed. Santa Fe is one of the newest ships, and so the Navy is simplifying their machinery, and this is one of things. But I only had 2 weeks to take over, and this was one of 10,000 things that I didn't realize. So I lean over to the officer in the middle of this, and I say, hey, let's speed up on the electric motor. It'll draw more current. It'll drain the battery faster. It'll put some stress on the team. Isn't that a good thing? And he orders it, second gear. And this poor sailor sitting right here kind of shrugs his shoulders because there is no second gear. And it's apparent. Nothing happens. And I look over and I say, what's going on? He says, Captain, on the Santa Fe, it's only a one-speed motor. There's no second gear. It was super awkward. And I was embarrassed. And he said it was very flat tone of voice, very close to how I tried to say it there. And I recognized this flat tone of voice. This is your team. I call it the hey, boss, you're an idiot tone of voice. This is your team trying to speak up and tell you you're about to make a mistake. So here's the knob, and this is the way we're supposed to do it. And so I got the officers together, and I said, we got a problem because I'm going to tell you guys what to do, but I don't really know the ship. And you guys are going to follow orders, even though you ought to speak up. And so we're doomed to death. And so what are we going to do? Now, I've been there before on both sides of this, and the answer is always, well, give people a lecture, tell them, order them to speak up, order them to be proactive, order them to take initiative, order them, whatever it is. It's very comfortable because it means them. They need to do it. I didn't need to do anything. My behavior was perfectly fine. And it got reflected back onto me that maybe it's me. And the deal we made was that I needed to be quiet in order for them to speak up, not they speak up and then I be quiet. And so I made a deal never to give an order as a submarine commander. And they said, well, we don't know what that looks like. And we said, well, look, when you come to me, don't ask permission. Just say I intend to submerge the ship, process this client, give a discount, whatever it happens to be. And if you use the word intent, that means you already have permission to do it. I can veto it, but if I don't say anything, you're off to the races. Now, that's not a complete statement. Intent statements include why it's technically correct and why it's the right thing to do. I intend to submerge the ship. All personnel are below. The hatches are shut. We've checked the water. These are the technical issues with submerging. And then the reason we're submerging here and now is because ABC. So this is what a fuller intent statement sounds like. And when people can just say what they intend to do and then do it. So in fast-moving operations, it might sound like opening the outer door, flooding the torpedo tube, energizing the weapon, and they're just announcing it. Then they push the button. Not I push the button and say, I energize the weapon. The key is that the statement comes first because that allows other people to react to it. And if there's something wrong with the action, they can speak up. Otherwise, you're just talking after we've already screwed something up. So one of the things I think about is in quality, one of the quality initiatives I think is very valuable for manufacturing is lean, and we like to lean our quality processes. We remove waste. But when I ask organizations about leaning their decision-making, they sometimes look at me with doe eyes because they've never thought about that. And one of the things I think is very valuable is to think about what is the flow path of a decision and where are all the latencies, where are things not happening, and what can we do as leaders to shorten up those latencies and remove waste in decision-making. And this is a very simple model, initiate, or I need to know that there's a decision we need to make, and we typically collaborate, we talk about it, and there's a commitment by the organization to do something or learn something. And the idea is, can we remove those latencies? Because you aren't going to process patients faster by filling out paperwork faster. It can be by the key decisions that people make in the process. Now, it's very easy for me to say, oh, I didn't give any orders. And my crew always came forward to me with not just a problem, but a solution. But there were two problems. The first problem was me. My wiring, my instincts were always to be in control. I would see a problem. I thought I knew the answer. I want to tell them the answer as soon as possible because that seemed efficient. But the problem was I was poaching their ownership, and I was stealing their ability to noodle on the problem. I was stealing their ability to derive human satisfaction from problem solving. And so what I'd have to do is I have to see a problem and then resist telling them what I thought the answer was. No, and give people control. Now, you can practice this in a really fun way where you go to a restaurant and I want you to see if you can get the order, quote, empower the server. Get the server to choose for you what your meal is going to be. If that's too big, maybe just choose the beverage. And what this means is you don't, when I say choose, I mean you don't know what it is until it comes in front of you. Not, well, what do you want, chicken or fish? Oh, I'll have the fish. That's you choosing. They say, okay, I got it. I know what I'm going to bring you. Now, what that's going to do, it's going to exercise two things. Number one, you will have to deal with that discomfort, the anxiety of not knowing exactly what you're going to get. And number two, you're going to have to make it safe for that person to make a decision for you. This is exactly what you're going to have to do at work. But you can practice it in a very safe place where the consequences are nil. And then when you get the feeling down and you can practice, then you can try it at work. The other problem was, of course, them. They were programmed to be told what to do. And our language always took us back to this sort of telling compliant language. And so I want to give you framework 2. So leadership framework 1 was the knowing telling matrix, and framework 2 is I call it reduce variability, embrace variability. Now here we have, this is a history of what James Watt sparked with the Industrial Revolution in one slide. And these are nailed, and you can see they move from handcrafted, each unique, a collectible nails to those are machine stamped nails, and then modern wire nails, which are almost indistinguishable from each other. Now, while the handcrafted nails may be collectible items, they're not very good for building houses because the holding strength of each one is slightly different. They don't go through a nail gun very well, and all those kind of things. So the Industrial Revolution was about reducing variability. And so you can see the bottom nails, a box of the bottom nails would be almost entirely identical. So the organization was designed to reduce variability, and we worked in places that look like this. Conformity and compliance, school, same thing. Rows of happy children, looking forward. And it's about compliance, conformity, knowing the right answer, and the reduction of variability. And the way we spoke is inherently designed to reduce variability. Of course, then this is my favorite picture. Now, I'm going to show you why. One way that we see this reduction in variability. But I want to tell you about a psychological phenomenon called overclaiming. Overclaiming is when we put people on a team and we ask them what portion of the job did they do. So a psychologist started testing this with a very common two-person team, a marriage, and they gave the husband and the wife separate interview sheets, and they said, what % of the household chores do you do? And then they added those two numbers up. Now, if the husband and the wife, let's say they both did it exactly correct, and the wife said 80% and the husband 20%, and they added it up and it was 100, then the answer would be 100. Of course, you can't do more than 100% of household chores. If each person claimed they did all the chores, then it would be 100 plus 100 plus 2, it would be 200. So I just want you to think around and type into the chat box, what do you think the researchers of this was an early study back in 1979 in Canada. They said husband and wife, add up the two numbers. What percentage of the household chores do you do? What do you think? What do you think the researchers came up with? Just sort of type some numbers in and push enter and let's see what we come up with. Yeah, okay, 180, 120, I'm good. I'm seeing the numbers, 150, 140, 130. Yep. Yeah. 168. Good. 200. That means they both claimed all. 170. Okay, good. It turns out the answer wasn't quite as bad as what some of you were thinking. It's about 130. But what we do is when we have executives sitting at tables, we tell the table they got to come up with an answer themselves. And so here's typically what happens. So here's an executive, a 10-person senior executive team on a company, and what happens is when I say, you guys got to come up with a number and one number per table, ready, go. And one person almost immediately blurts out what they think the answer is. So in this case, it was the person said 125. And then what happened then is that table gets to 125, and then the next table gets to 125. In other words, they've all agreed with this person at the end. This is the anchoring phenomenon. Now, it turns out that this person is the CEO and co-founder of the company. But think about it. This person is spending a lot of money, paying a lot of executives, men and women, smart men and women, a lot of money to just parrot back what that person thinks. There's no independent thinking going on here. This is the problem, because our hypothesis, my belief, is that to fundamentally improve quality, we need to push past a compliance approach and get to a thinking approach. Quality improves when everybody is thinking and making good decisions. So, and the fact that this happens this way is because we're so happy to jump into the reduced variability part of the problem, which is I'm going to anchor people and convince people that it's 125. The right way to answer this in a group is to have everybody independently write down their beliefs, like you guys were doing in the chat box. But even then, after the first person typed in a number, the rest of the group is now influenced by the earlier numbers. So the best way to do it, if you want to know what the group thinks, is to have everyone in a hidden way write down what they believe and then expose their numbers. That's the divergent part. Then collapse on an answer. Okay, so I'm going to show you, I have a video where I'm going to show you a team that's stuck in the old ways. And Jennifer, if you want to go ahead and bring up the video, let me narrate for a minute while you're bringing it up. But what I want to show you here is Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway announcing the wrong movie for the winner of the Best Picture at the Oscars. And I'm just going to play the first 30 seconds of the video, and I want you to watch.
And the Academy Award for Best Picture.
You're impossible. Come on. La La Land.
Okay. Let's go ahead and bring it back to the beginning and get set up to play it on mute. And I want to play it again, but just hold for a second. So what's happening here, people, is that this is the final award of the evening, and they're supposed to announce the award for the best movie, but the envelope they have is for the best actress. So the card says Emma Stone, La La Land. And so the reason he has that weird look on his face is because he's looking at a card that says Emma Stone, La La Land, and he doesn't know why would the best actress be, why would an actress or an actor show up on the card? It should just be the name of the movie. And you can see he hesitates, he looks off stage, and then he shows it over to Faye, and she blurts out the answer. So when okay, that's good. You can go ahead and stop it. And then it goes for like 2 minutes, and they finally correct it, and it's just horrible. It's a horrible situation. Now, I want to spend a few minutes talking about what I think is going on here. And so the first thing we do with audiences is that we'll ask them a question. Let's imagine that we could pause time, and we pause time right when Warren Beatty opens the envelope. He looks in, and he has that screwed up look on his face. And then we say, what do you think the odds are that Warren thinks that he's got the wrong card? What do you think the odds are that Warren thinks there's an error happening here? So in your work, this could be something like we're about to dose the wrong medicine, or we're processing someone wrong with the wrong medicine, or whatever. So let's go ahead and type in some numbers. Let me know what you guys think. 0 to 100. If he thinks it's definitely a problem, you can write 100 or 99. We actually don't like 100 because that indicates a little too much certainty. So 99, let's go 1 to 99. If you think, no, it's fine, then type in something like a 1 or a 5 or a 10. Yeah, 99.999. That's good, Sophie. 5, okay, good. Keep going, let's see. I want to see a bunch more. Okay, there's a 50, 65, 60 from Carol, 80, 199 from Gail. Okay, you guys can still type those in, but what I want you to imagine now is that you're in a meeting and you're asking people what's the likelihood that there's a problem here. Now, my assessment here is that a lot of people are saying he definitely sees a problem. 80s, 85s, 90s, 99.9, 100. But we've got one person who's saying, no, I don't think he thinks there's a problem. So the first thing we want to do is we want to re-script our own response to that. The typical response to something like that is, oh, you're the outlier. You must be, quote, wrong. Let's explain to you why you're so wrong. And what I want you to do as leaders is to practice the opposite. I want you to be curious. Be curious, not compelling. Be curious about what is it that they see that I don't see? What is it that they know that I don't know? Now, I can make a case that he doesn't think it's a problem. And the strongest aspect, I think, to that case is that he goes on with the show, and it doesn't make sense. If he's not 100% sure that this card is wrong, why would he go on with the show? That does not make sense. So we then say, what's the case? And if you want to have a lot of fun, so the basic level of this is you invite the other person to express their opinion. We call it embrace the outlier. And we always go with the minority first, because after the majority speaks, it's just a little bit harder for the minority to speak. So the leader speaks, withholds their opinion. The leader manages the interaction in a way that allows the outliers to give voice, especially the people who are sort of out there by themselves, because they actually may be right, and even if they're not, quote, right, we're going to learn something from them. Now, I think what happens is he opens the envelope and he has a temporary feeling that there's a problem. You can see it in his face. He second checks the envelope, and so temporarily he thinks there's a problem. But then something happens in his brain and he goes on with the show. And so what we think is happening here is this is not a relaxed moment for him. He's basically back in his old reptile brain because he's on live TV. He sees something unexpected. He doesn't think that he's going to be making any decisions tonight. It's just a do what you're told job. Show up, get dressed, look nice, walk on stage, open the envelope, pass the buffet, read the card. And his whole mindset is under stress and pressure, and he's feeling the burden of the clock ticking. Then he has to make a decision. And what he's weighing very quickly, his reptile brain is in charge, and his reptile brain is weighing, do I raise my hand and say, hey, let's check this out, I'm not sure this is right, or do I just go on with the show? And you see he obviously opts to go on with the show, and then he shows it to her. She just blurts it out. And I think, so Kirsty just typed in, and what's the risk if he gets it wrong? This is exactly the issue, because what his reptile brain has got, the calculus that's got to perform very quickly is, well, if I stop it and it turns out the card is actually right, now what happens? Am I ridiculed? Am I embarrassed? This is what people normally say. But why is that? Why is that? You are trying to make the process more resilient. You are trying to make it higher quality. You are trying to reduce errors. And if we can say, you only raise your hand if you're more than 100% sure it's a problem, then you're going to get a lot of errors propagate through the system just like this because of the attitude that we have towards raising our hand and stopping the Oscars. So one of the things that I think it would be fun for you to do with your own teams is to either just watch this and then ask your people the question, what is in the way of him stopping the Oscars? And see how many things you can get from that. Now, so that's what the card looks like, and you see it has Emma Stone, La La Land. Now, when we do this, what's in the way? I think basically these are sort of the top things that most groups say. There's the fear of getting it wrong, there's the stress of live TV, the expectations, the actions of the colleague or the boss where it pays, like egging them on, separating the authority. The authority to stop the show, it feels like that's off stage, but he has the information. And we say you want to push authority to information, not the other way around. And he doesn't actually have a mechanism. He doesn't have a card. He doesn't have a code word. He doesn't have a way of actually stopping the show. And it was never wrong before. So that's also weighing on him. So here's some quick tips, and I'm going to close up here so you can start thinking about your questions that you might want to type in the next 5 minutes. So when you run a meeting, don't discuss and then vote. Vote and then discuss and then maybe vote again. But the purpose, you'll have the widest variability, widest diversity in opinions before the discussion happens. So we use probability cards or our hands to vote, and then embrace the outliers. Listen with curiosity and respect to the people who are out on those fringe opinions. These are some of the cards that we would use. All binary questions are already a step toward reducing variability because it reduces the response to yes or no. So you see here there's no 0, no 100, and there's no yes, no. There's a range. So it's like, what's the likelihood? What's the probability? How sure are we that this is a diagnosis? Are you sure that's a diagnosis? No. 80% sure. I don't know how do I answer that. So here's some of the ones that we like. Not, is it safe? Is it going to work? I don't know. A favorite category that I like to hate on are the self-affirming questions, which are, does that make sense, right? We all good. In other words, you're asking a question in a way that makes the easy pass a mindless head nod. So we're all good to go. We're good to start the procedure, right? We're good to start the operation. We're all set. You guys all have the tools you need, right? None of that is helpful. What you want to do is make it easy for someone to say, no, I'm not sure what we're supposed to do. I'm not sure it's the left arm. I'm not sure I have all my tools. So you try instead what seems unclear, what could be explained, what could I do better explaining, how could this be wrong, that kind of thing. Avoid knowing. Even when, so this is the moment when someone comes and tells you, I think there's a problem, and you're like sure they're wrong. And we fall back to either tutoring them, or well, let me tell you, or we do the Socratic, well, have you thought about patient safety? Like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot about patients. I'm so glad you mentioned it. And that's just arrogant and annoying because you're still coming from a position of authority. You're still coming from, I know the answer, and I have to just ask the right questions so that you wake up and smell the roses. Even why can be provocative for some people. Well, why would you want to do? Why do you think that? Well, then you're indefensive. So instead, I ask again, what and how questions. Start the question with what or how. We made a mistake. I gave too much control. This was one of the risks of, quote, empowerment programs. That was us. We were loading a torpedo, and this is where we control competence and clarity. You cannot give people more decision-making authority than is warranted by their technical competence and their understanding of what we're trying to do. And so you want to move in this direction. And the way we did it is we had words. That was me with Steve McCovey. But then these words, which we call the ladder, and you can go on our website, go to ladderwithleadership.com, and you can see these words. But instead of saying, tell me what to do, your person say, here's what I see. And then on the flip side, our job as leaders is to invite the person to the next level. Hey, what do you want me to do here? Well, tell me about that. What do you see? What? Just describe. It's description. Description feels safe. It's easy. It's not threatening. Then we go to I think. Well, what do you think's going on? What would you like to do? Hey, if I weren't here, what would you do? You couldn't ask anyone what I would do. Okay, great. So that's the idea. And then finally, we are fighting a fire. We weren't very good. We sat down afterwards. What happened? Well, they, too much they. And I got angry, and I beat my fist on the table. I said, there's no they on Santa Fe, and it rhymed. So that was super awesome because people believed it. And we had to use the word we. And by practicing the word we repeatedly, it began to feel like a team. But the action, the language precedes the feeling. We call it, we act our way to new thinking, not think our way to new action. And too many change programs have this, in my opinion, backwards because they're saying, oh, let me convince you, let me create a burning plan and convince you so magically something will happen. No. Like, let's commit to a very small change. Let's stop asking binary questions. Let's ask people, how ready are we to start the procedure? Not, are we ready to start the procedure? And just start with that. And then with time, our brains will rewire. And this is a little bit about my next book, which I'll reserve that. So why don't I'm going to leave this No Day on Santa Fe slide up. And why don't we go over to, I'll pause and we'll run into some, what your thoughts are.
David, thank you so much. There's so much we need another hour, but we'll maybe have you back another time. It's fantastic. Even right at the end there, I love the tips about how to get information from people. So let's if you give me the ball, David, if you could, and let's go to.
I have to give up control. No, I think Jenny can do that.
How comfortable are you at giving up control?
I you know what, I'm very uncomfortable, but I'm willing to do it because I'm trying to be a better human being. Jennifer, can you do that?
I have it. So
yeah, okay, great.
So I've just put your book up on the screen, so I think everybody realizes, and in the chat box, much more of this information in your book. And there was a couple of slides back that because you were rushing, you didn't do this one. So this is your new book, I presume, that's coming out in February. Is that right? Yeah, I'm super excited because basically the idea is I think we've been programmed from the Industrial Revolution to respond in those all those unhelpful responses are not because we're evil people. It's because we've been programmed to reduce variability. And what we want to do when we're in thinking mode is embrace variability. There's still a time to reduce variability, but we want to sometimes embrace variability, so we need a new language. So this book is basically what would that new language sound like and why is it so hard to come to? So the chat box is full of questions, which we're not going to be able to get to many of them, but Achut gets the privilege of being able to choose a question of his own to ask you. So Achut, what do you have for David?
Great, no, thanks for that, David. Particularly great tips around language. I know I ask, does that make sense quite a lot, so I'm going to have to wrap my knuckles on that one. But I'd really love to hear your thoughts around
So here's my coaching tip to you. Don't pick 10 things. Just pick one thing. Like for you, if that's like, does that make sense? Just pick that one thing and just say, okay, I'm going to change that for the next month, and I'm going to see what happens. I'm going to run an experiment. Okay, sorry, back to you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we can foster psychological safety, particularly when many of the teams we work in don't really have the luxury of stable membership. You know, for example, in our own department, every day it's a different group of doctors, nurses, pharmacists, physios, occupational therapists, admin staff, etc., that are really having to work with people that they might not have met before and might not even work with again. So, you know, when we come together, we do something really important and then we go off again. But importantly, at different times of the day that make coming together at either the start or the end nigh on impossible. So how do we get around that?
Yeah, so I think this is one of the key responsibilities of leaders is to create that environment of safety. And it's not about ordering your people to speak up. It's about you creating an inviting atmosphere where people feel like they can speak up. And I think some of it is very simple. It's asking, okay, how ready are we and then looking at everyone, okay, and letting everyone vote and participate and being interested in people. You might do things, some of these things, the airlines use a thing called CRM, and one of the things that's part of that is when the team comes together, you introduce each other. Just say, hey, I'm Joanne, I'll be the head surgeon today. I'm Sam, I'm the anesthesiologist. And I wonder sometimes, is there something more we can do with that makes people human? Now, I don't know what it would be, and I don't want to violate on people's privacies, but maybe it's like, oh, and I have 3 kids or whatever it is. But if there's some way to create a human connection, and it starts with the leader being vulnerable a little bit, I think you could quickly move things forward. But fundamentally, there needs to be an environment of assuming good intent. And so when someone shows up with an NHS logo on their uniform, you're part of the tribe. That's why we wear uniforms with logos, because it thinks that I'm part of the tribe and I'm committed to these outcomes, and I'm committed to a safe environment, and I commit to listening to you. So maybe there's some sort of a oath or a creed that people at NHS, doctors typically at the end of medical school, there's an oath that they take, but maybe there's some sort of a thing that we all commit to as being part of the organization. And then so I come with that pre-commitment.
I'm going to ask you, actually, thank you very much. I'm going to use the last 2 minutes for just one question from the crowd, and that's Elaine Buchan, who's in Aberdeen City Council, David, right in the north east of Scotland, and she's asked a very interesting question that you'll have to answer relatively quickly. But have you got any tips for giving control and responsibility away to perhaps a more reluctant audience, people who are reluctant to take that responsibility and control?
Number one, it's their choice. If they don't want to take control, then we have to create an environment where they can be successful just doing what they're told. In my heart, I believe these people have been there's no people like that. There's people in environments like that because we've been conditioned. They've experienced trying to take control and it's not worked out. They got blamed or whatever. So we have to respect someone's right to not. The word we use on the ladder is we invite people. We invite you to make more. We invite you to share your thoughts. We don't order you. It doesn't make any sense. We can't do an empowerment program and then order people to do it. That makes no sense. So it's all everyone's choice. So we have to figure out, hey, if you want to be told what to do. Now, by the way, we're not going to recommend you for promotion because this is one of the key behaviors that we expect from our leaders. So you can just wait and be told what to do, but this is the consequence of that decision that you're making. As long as we're both good and open and honest about that, I'm fine with that. Now, on the submarine, what happened was we did have a few holdouts, but eventually I think almost everybody came around. A couple of people left the organization, which may happen to you. We see this in organizations because when the organization is clear, hey, this is the behavior we're expecting, it's actually harder because you can't escape the responsibility of your decision. And this is what holds people back. Because the excuses I thought I knew it was screwed up, but I was just doing what I was told. So that responsibility is scary, and not everyone's going to want it. You don't have to take it, but that'll put your life in a different trajectory, which we respect. But it just means you can't pretend that you're going to lead a team, but then operate in this. I'm just going to wait to be told what to do and tell people what to do. That's how David, I think you handle it. David, easy to say, hard to do. Yeah,
indeed. And thank you so much for that hour of wisdom. You also manage the technology and the web-based nature of it very well. It's quite difficult to speak in a webinar. So well done. It only remains for me in the last 30 seconds to advertise our next QI Connect on the 21st of November, and that will be Tejal Gandhi. Tejal is a friend of many of us in Scotland. She's used to be the chief executive of the National Patient Safety Foundation in the US, and now with the merger with IHI is now the chief clinical and safety officer at IHI. So please look out in your inboxes for that, and that will form part of our 2019 set of QI Connect speakers that David has so kindly joined today. Please, as you leave, as the music starts and fades us out, please remember to tweet. And David, thank you very much again for joining us.